the Secretary of Defense. Look at our crew coming through big. This is phenomenal. The music, the fireworks,
production.
All of us shall salute you because we want your opinion right away on the Metro and their blue lines. Let's start across the river from your New Jersey Devils with Adam Fox, Keandre Miller, the New York Rangers. The Broadway Blue Shirts have a solid blue line.
They do. And the youngster Schneider on the back end, who's physical, robust, I think is only going to get better. I mean, we've just seen the tip of the iceberg of what he's capable of. So it's a nice balance because he really brings an edge. He plays it physical. He moves the puck well, and I think he's only going to get better as his confidence grows. Look, Adam Fox, for all intents and purposes, may be the best defenseman in the game as far as distributing the puck.
Solid.
And the look-offs. Does anybody look off 3-4 defenders as they lead
Poised.
and hits his teammate right through the seam where it looks like an impossible pass? So he does as good as anybody in the game. Miller has been a little bit inconsistent up and down at times, but that great skating ability, size, reach, it's a really good core, and we know Lindgren brings that grit, that competitiveness, and he's a real nice pairing with Adam Fox. They're very formidable, and when I look at this entire Metro division,
It's amazing.
The Penguins got better, obviously adding Carlson. Carolina Hurricanes, who I thought, and a lot of people thought, maybe the best defense core in the National Hockey League, or at least near the top and the best in the Metro, got better with Orlov. They get D'Angelo back, who really fit nicely there when he was in Carolina. So there's no margin for error for these teams in the Metro because the back end on a lot of these teams has gotten so much better.
What about the New Jersey Devils? You see them all the time. I think of a Hughes brother who's back there. It took him about 45 seconds to get comfortable at this level. As you look at those three pairings, what comes to mind?
Well, look, it might take some time. We always say there's going to be growing pains for young players, but I have no doubt watching Luke Hughes late in the season and in the playoffs, he is going to have a monster impact right away. And you've got a steady guy like John Marino to probably play with him along the way. Hamilton had a terrific year. Siegenthaler, that defensive stalwart. Kevin Ball, can he take that next step? He showed flash last year that he can be that physical force and just good, solid defenseman with a 6'6" reach. I mean, he's tough to get around. Again, Simon Nemec, they have time. He's going to have to earn his way on the team in training camp. He was terrific, especially in the second half of the year with the Utica Comets, their AHL affiliate. I think it would be a good group. I'm not going to say they're going to be better when you lose veterans like Graves and Severson, but that's the salary cap world.
Yeah,
you have to give and take. You have to make adjustments, and they got some other guys up front signed to long-term deals, so you got to sacrifice defensemen that you just couldn't afford anymore. But that gives these young guys an opportunity. I still think they're going to have a really good puck-moving group. And Luke Hughes, I'll tell you what, I mean, I hate comparing, I hate putting pressure on guys like that, but when I watch his skating ability and how effortless it is, reminds me of Amira Heiskanen, reminds me of my former teammate who we used to compare Heiskanen to at times on this show, Scott Niedermayer.
That's big time.
I'm not saying that's who he's going to be and be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done, but he has that kind of poise, presence, and just effortless skating ability, and the Devils are going to certainly like to see that on a regular basis starting this season. He's just a baby. Yes, there will be some mistakes and growing pains along the way, but he's a pretty poised guy, and we know the Hughes guys are, the Hughes family, pretty confident group.
Yes, very.
He's going to expect big things from himself right away. So I think the Devils D should be pretty good, but like I said, you lose two veteran guys, no, that will leave a little bit of that veteran kind of play, and you just have to overcome it with other guys stepping up and, you know, filling in those voids, whether it's a young guy, whether it's other guys just doing a little bit more, a little bit of what those guys brought to the table. Because Graves and Severson were really good for the Devils.
With the Secretary of Defense next to me, we have to fire the cannon. I'm talking about the Columbus Blue Jackets. You mentioned growing pains. For them, last year was a tough year. As you look at their projected defensive pairs, there's Severson, who you were talking about, and Zach Werenski, who's a national treasure. What about Provorov? A new start for him there.
If this group gels and finds chemistry right away, this might be the most improved defense in the National Hockey League. You would think, right? Large in part, Werenski, a guy that they already had on their team, missed all of last season for all intents and purposes. He's going to make a huge difference. But now you add a Provorov who had a tough year in Philadelphia, like their team, and that kind of goes hand in hand. But a new lease on life going to the Columbus Blue Jackets if he can get back to being that real good two-way defenseman. I see Damon Severson for, a decade in New Jersey pretty well, and he's a guy that is a good two-way defenseman when he's on his game and playing consistently. And obviously, Boqvist has a bright upside as well. You can't forget the young guys. So I think it's a really nice mix there, certainly with the Columbus Blue Jackets, but adding a veteran like Severson, adding a veteran like Provorov, and getting a healthy Werenski for there's another guy that was one of the top 10 defensemen in the league when he's at his best. So you'd think it was a nightmare of a season for the Columbus Blue Jackets last year. Yes, injuries played a part of it. We talk about it all the time. It played a big part of it. But I think they should be much, much improved because they bled goals last year like no other. And they certainly need to get better there. That's what they addressed.
Your fellow Devils retired number, Scott Stevens, said, people couldn't tell if we made Marty or Marty made us. But the bottom line was the D and the goalie really worked well together. 3 rings, 3 cups. How about your old boss, Lou Lamoriello, with the New York Islanders? The first thing you brought up when we mentioned their D pairs was the guy in net. And it's tough to say whether he makes them or they make him, but it seems to be a good pair.
I think great analogy that you said, and my longtime captain, Scott Stevens, mentioned to you. It goes hand in hand, right? I mean, obviously, you can maybe stand up a little more. You can maybe force a little more pressure into the corner because if you happen to make that mistake, if you slip, if you get caught out of position, we know we got a pretty good guy behind us, and that makes the game easier for a defenseman, right? It's pretty well the same core. It's been one of the more solid cores in the National Hockey League. They weren't quite as good last year in their own zone. If they can get back to being a little more sound in front of Sorokin, then they're going to be a tough bunch. We know the Islanders are built on good defensive structure and led by the 6th defenseman, and they've got Dobson, who took a step last year, brings that little offense to the back end, a little more of what they needed, I think. And if he can continue to grow and develop his game, that's a guy that brings a little different element there. But you got Pulock and Pelech and certainly Mayfield, who brings that snarl and grit along the way. They're always a good, solid group that really tough to get through the middle of the ice on them. This Metro division, you go on down the list, the defense is really good. And the Islanders, again, maybe a little slow of foot, maybe not as quick as some of the other defensive teams or 6-man units, but they're big, they're strong, good reaches. And what do you need come playoff time? And that's a team that always you worry about. Any team doesn't want to face the New York Islanders because they know they're so difficult in their own zone when they're on their game. And, they got one of the best goaltenders in the world that you mentioned.
Without a doubt. Now, your office as Secretary of Defense, I like to imagine, is in D.C. And I like to imagine that John Carlson would swing by and just get wisdom from you. His health, as long as he's healthy, which last year it was just a nightmare, he really makes an impact for those Caps.
It changed the dynamic of the Washington Capitals defense completely. And I happened to talk to GM Brian McClellan near the end of the season when Carlson was just coming back. And I said, Brian, that must just kind of change everything. I know nobody makes excuses of why things went south for your hockey club.
Right.
John Carlson's elite defenseman in the game, one of the best. And when he's out for the extended period that he was out, everybody kind of is out of place, and guys get more minutes maybe than they're used to, and that adjustment's not easy. Now you got John Carlson, and if John Carlson is healthy, he's that guy that's going to log 25-plus minutes a night and kind of be the facilitator from the back end and the big shot and quarterback the power play. So they're going to be better just from that. Sandin made really good strides getting traded from Toronto. He played very well for them. Are they a little thin there? Still, I think they might be a little thin on the back end. Their core, but having John Carlson back is going to make them that much more dangerous.
So are the Canes the best defensive core? I'm putting you on the spot.
You put me on the spot, I'd still have to say the Carolina Hurricanes have the best defensive core group in the Metropolitan Division and probably in the National Hockey League.
Hard to argue.
For my money, but the other teams are close in the Metro Division. A lot of teams have improved on the back end.